Welcome, Walnut. I'm Lara, but you can call me Laz, your host for Walnut Wednesday. This is your reminder to be brave, be yourself, and know that you can make the world a better place just by what you decide today. Here, I'm going to share my weekly walnuttings with you on a Wednesday. Hello, Walnut. It is me, Laz, here for another episode of Walnut Wednesday, and I am so excited this week because I have one of Nana's best friends on the podcast, Sophie Bell from Pawsitive Behaviours. Welcome, Sophie.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you today. So, Walnut, Sophie is the company director and she's a dog trainer at Pawsitive Behaviours, which is a company that, Sophie, you've basically just manifested into existence, right? Do you want to introduce yourself to start off with, and then we'll go from there?
Sure. So I'm Sophie. I started my dog training business in May 2019. I didn't grow up with dogs, amazingly. I just sort of stumbled into the dog thing about 7 or 8 years ago. I had a little bit of a quarter life crisis, and someone asked me what I wanted to do with my life. And I said I wanted to work with dogs, and they said, why don't you? Which was quite a good question, because I'd always had people say to me, there's no money in dogs, you can't make a career out of it. So when somebody that I didn't know or didn't know me said, why don't you? I was kind of like, that's a great question. Why don't I? So I enrolled in some relevant courses, and it just sort of happened. And now here I am with a little company, or a big company, with 5 staff, 110 dogs being walked every week, and I see another 30 or so through classes and in-home sessions. So that's pretty much my whole life now is my business and dogs.
I love that. And dogs just bring, I always feel strange about people who are actually scared of dogs, because they actually just bring the most joy to like a home, or when you're visiting a home, or even when you're walking past them in the street. Usually they just have this really lovely like nature about them as a species. But you mentioned you didn't have dogs growing up. So when did you have your first dog, and when did you discover that I want to work with them?
So when I was 19, I sort of rekindled a relationship with somebody that I've known since I was really young. And I went to his house, and there running around was 2 pit bull puppies. And naturally, based on what's portrayed about them in the media and me not knowing much about dogs, I was like, I don't know about this. But they were so sweet, like the most beautiful little puppies. And his dog was called Chef, and he sort of took me by surprise with just how amazing he was. So I started taking him for walks. I was a university student at the time, so I had lots of evenings free, and I used to take him for a walk. And people would cross the street when they saw us walking towards them. And he was all of about 5 or 6 months old. So that started to make me quite upset, because he was so loving and so little, and he didn't even have his adult teeth yet. Like, what was he going to do to people? So I started to get a little bit into the bully breed stigma, and did a lot of research and a lot of reading. I even wrote an article for Stuff about why I was a pit bull convert, and how loving they are. And the comments were really awful. Saying that it doesn't matter, how you raise them or whatever, that they always turn. Well, Chef is 8.5 now, and he comes with my Wednesday group. He's actually met Nana on Wednesday walks. And he's still amazing. He's the kind of dog that even at 6 months old, you could have him pretty much off lead anywhere, and he would just walk beside you and wouldn't go up to people or other dogs. He was quite happy just tootling along. So that was sort of the start. But a friend of mine at the time noticed that I'd sort of got the dog bug and suggested I go and do some volunteer dog walking. So I did. And that's how I met my dog, Pebbles. Pebbles was locked in a toilet room for the first 6 months of her life by people that were on meth. So she was found when she was literally the size of your hand, apparently. This is what they said, on the beach. It's really sad. and put in this toilet room. And when a rescue organisation was called, when they got there, they found her in the toilet room. She was like brown, not she's black, but she was brown because she was so sick and emaciated, and all around her eyes were like completely red. So she had no socialization, no exposure, no nothing, terrible food, horrible living environment. And then she went to a shelter environment, which was also not great for her, like so stressful, so much noise. And she was like borderline feral, I suppose. They couldn't really get in there to feed her for a couple of weeks. They sort of had to quickly open the door, shove it in, and shut the door. I came along when she'd been there for about 2 months and took her for a walk. Amazingly, they gave her to me. Like, I didn't really know a lot about dogs. And the guy was just like, here's Pebbles. And I took her for a walk. We walked down to the end of the driveway and back. And then she sat with me while we were waiting for her turn to go back in. They were going to bring me another dog. And she just sat next to me and like rested her head on my shoulder. And one of the volunteers walked out and I said, hello, and then carried on. And then they turned around and looked at me and was like, is that Pebbles? And I was like, mm-hmm. And she was like, she hasn't done that to anyone yet. So that's when I was just kind of like, yeah, okay, that's nice, good girl, give her a pat. But little did I know that I was the first person outside of the volunteers that she'd actually like walked for and then sat comfortably with for a cuddle. So I went back and walked her every week for 9 months. And before I adopted her. But I suppose having Chef, being a pit bull, and people see him as aggressive purely based on what he looks like, but actually he's so beautiful and so friendly and so social. And then meeting Pebbles, who looks so cute and people think she's friendly, but she's not, I suppose made me rethink the whole dog thing, and that people are often looking at it from an uneducated perspective. So that's the driving force behind why I wanted to start my business, was to, educate people and encourage responsible dog ownership and a little bit more of an understanding about dogs overall.
Yeah, I love that. And you do really promote that well, because like I see on like your Instagram stories and stuff, like I remember over the firework period with Guy Fawkes, about fireworks, you're putting little posts up and things like that. You're always like posting little tips and tricks that are like, I watch them and I'm like, oh my gosh, like you just forget these things sometimes, and people think, oh, willy-nilly, I'm just going to buy a dog because they're cute. But actually, like, it's a whole living, breathing thing with like feelings and anxiety and all the things as well. So it is really sad. And I love that story about your baby. So nice.
It's very sad, but it has a very happy ending.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like for some dogs, they don't have very happy ones, and it's because of this, like the whole breeding thing, and just buying them when you don't really have like the facility or that kind of thing, to house them really, or to look after them. So it's like, oh, I'm getting emotional on this episode. It's very sad. Also, Walnut, for those of you who are new, Nana is my sister and she's my dog. So if you hear us talking about Nana running around or something, it's not like my grandma. It's actually Nana, my Labrador.
we love Nan.
Oh, she is a character. So let's talk about these pack walks where all Nan's best friends live. So she started coming once a week, and now she comes, I think, 3 times. But what made you like? Were you nervous about having all these dogs? How did they begin? All the things. Let's go.
Yes, it was quite nerve-wracking. I suppose I'd sort of got my business to a level where if I wanted to take it full-time, I needed another element that was going to make that possible financially. And, walking dogs is a great passion of mine. I think one of the most beneficial things about having a dog for both the dog and the human is being able to take them for a walk and both of them enjoying it. And it's definitely the thing that I see the most, is people struggling to take their dogs for an enjoyable walk for whatever reason. So that was sort of a no-brainer, was starting small pack walks at the time. And there was a great interest for it. Following puppy classes, people wanted to do more with me, and I started to get asked a lot, do you do dog walking? And I was like, heck, why not? So I started, and I look back on it now, and I was way in over my head. I had no idea what I was in for. I've had 3 dogs before, all bull breed mixes, and I used to walk them all by myself around Paraparaumu Beach, and people used to look at me like I was crazy because I had these 3, scary looking dogs, and people would steer clear. But it was a breeze for me. So I was like, oh, why not give it a go again? And so I started with 4, and they were all under 1. I was actually due to start pack walks the first day of the first lockdown. Um,
Um,
so there went that idea, but it gave me a little bit more time to prepare.
mm,
Um, but it wasn't long before inquiries were coming in. People saw me walking 4 or 5 dogs and jumped on the bandwagon so quickly. So once I got to the point where I could start doing more walks, I just sort of put the word out on Facebook and had a huge influx of inquiries. So I think when I started doing a walk every day, I think I had about 20 different dogs a week for a few months before we were able to build on them. But I suppose I'd seen other trainers that I follow particularly on Instagram, posting amazing photos of them walking groups of dogs, and thought I can do that. And I can do it using positive based methods, because I see a lot of dog walkers using aversive training techniques. And it always makes me wonder why the dog is on the walk if they need to wear like a shock collar or a prong collar, which I don't use. And I wanted to make my walks a positive experience for the dogs that come along. So they're using harnesses or halties as a bit more of a comfortable option. And if they don't fit on the group walk for whatever reason, I was aiming to be really honest with the owners and say, look, it just doesn't work for them, because I want to stick with the positive based methods. And people responded really well to that. And then it just sort of exploded. And I needed help. So now I've got staff and 2 vans and a lifestyle property where we can run them, and exploring all of these different walks. And it's pretty amazing, really.
I love that. And all the girls that come and grab Nan are so lovely. Like, it's how cool is it to be in a position where you can like pick your people and be like, you're a good, like, was that fun to like choose people who like have the same passion as you do?
Yes, and I'm so forever grateful that I found Sarah. I actually knew Sarah before my business. I hired her when I was a restaurant manager. She was the best hospo trial I've ever had.
Oh.
I hired her on the spot. She was amazing. But she had a dog sort of similar to Pebbles. So she has the experience with the reactive sort of antisocial dog. So when she helped me out for a couple of walks and then knew I was hiring and said, well, she's like, I'd be interested in working for you. I was like, that's amazing. So that was a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm.
But she's amazing. She's just my left arm, really. So yeah, I'm really happy that I found her. And Gina's great as well, so reliable. Lucy and I have formed an amazing friendship. I've known her for a wee while as well. But having her on Tuesdays has been amazing. And I've got someone else starting in the new year that I also really like. So yes, finding them and having such great employees has been amazing.
Yeah, I love that. And I loved your little like Christmas party catch up, and you got all these treats from all the owners because you just like look after everyone's babies in such a good
grateful.
way. Oh, it's so nice. And like Nan comes back in like the most cheeriest mood. She's got so many stories to tell. Like her turbo tail is just like hitting everything because she's just so happy, wants to tell us on her adventures she's been on with you guys. Like she so enjoys them.
She's a hoot.
So let's talk about like logistics of like a big walk. I actually want to talk a little bit about your property as well that you take all the doggies to as well, because that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
But like on a walk, I see in your pictures that you have like a thing around your tummy, and then you have all these dogs like attached to you. I just think from Nana, because she was actually a horrible dog to walk because she loves to stop and sniff and all the things. What if you have like 5 nanas? on you that need to stop, and you're just like this big octopus with all these tentacles everywhere. The tangles, I can't even imagine.
I normally have like one Nana and 5 opposite of Nan.
Oh, okay.
So
she's
one
the
wants to
problem
stop, the
child.
other 5 want to go. It's definitely about getting to know the dogs individually and their personalities to make sure that when we're walking them, we have the right dogs attached to us. But it's definitely a bit of a juggle. So Nan loves to stop and sniff. She's got 4 other things that she loves to do. One, she always has to do a massive wee right at the beginning. And then about 30 seconds later, she then has to poop.
Yeah.
She has to go in water or through long grass. And she always has a mid-walk itch. So we get to know the dogs and we're prepared for it. So we know that she's going to have to stop and wee, then she's going to need to poo. If there's water or long grass, she's going to want to go through it. And at some point, there's going to be a midway itch. So the dead stopping doesn't take us by surprise anymore.
Yes, I can imagine.
We have dogs that we know are going to want to wee on things, are going to want to say hello to dogs that go past. So we just kind of get to know them and teach them their manners. So with Nana, if she needs to go through the water, we'll let her, and then we'll go, Nana, come on, and she'll come along with us. But yeah, it can be a bit of a juggle, but just getting to know the dogs individually.
Oh, that's like really reassuring as like I'm not her like legitimate owner, but it's like really nice to know that it's like case by case, it's not just like a dog. It's actually like you really know her personality, and I'm sure the other owners feel the same. I've actually like randomly bonded with like someone who I work with in Wellington, like who was saying like, oh yeah, look, this is a picture of my dog. It was on a Wednesday. He or she does these pack walks. I was like, oh, my Nana does the pack walks, and so we bonded because our dogs both were pack walk friends on the same day. So anyway. So you've bonded like all these people around not only Kapiti but like in the city as well.
Yeah, people always say to me, they're like, oh my goodness, my friend's dog comes walking with you, or my friend's doing puppy school with you. It's so cute.
I had a friend who also bought a puppy and went on the wait list, and they were like, yeah, we're trying to get into the people that walk Nan, but they're so busy. I'm like, yeah, they've like popped off. So they're on the wait list for your school, I think, or something like that.
So busy.
I love that. So I wanted to talk about your big like land for the doggies to like run around on. Tell me how that feels to be able to invest in something like that for your business, like all the things.
So it's actually turned out to be a little bit more of a trial than I was expecting, for numerous reasons. We were really, really lucky that we bought our previous house. Literally, we settled 3 days before the first lockdown. So we bought at a really good time, and then we outgrew that property so fast. Like it was just an 800 square metre section in Pawsitive Beach, which was great for my classes and good for running the puppies in the morning. But we just outgrew it so fast. So we decided to sell and bought this place. And again, sold at the right time, bought at the right time. And we were so excited. We've got 1.6 acres in Te Oro Beach, and it's such a beautiful property. The previous owners have done an amazing job with the landscape, like the trees and the flowers, and just the whole thing is amazing. But I think the big selling point was that there's like an acre of flat land as the paddock. So that's perfect for what I need it for. We've got some nosy neighbours that have made it a little bit difficult to get it set up for the dogs. Getting resource consent's been really hard, because people don't want to sign the consent form knowing that there could be 30 dogs here during the day. Even though we've had that many dogs here, and it's been really good, actually, not virtually no barking. But the recent flooding has flooded our whole paddock.
Oh,
so,
of course.
Even though that was almost 3 weeks ago, we still got a little bit of water, but killed our grass, and it's just a mud pit. So I feel so sorry for my own dogs. I can't even take them down to the paddock, and Pebbles loves running in the paddock and chasing balls and things like that. And it's also stuffed my classes because I do them down in the paddock. So we've had to use a really small area, which defeats the purpose of having all this land. But at the same time, it's taught us a lot. Like, it's taught us some really valuable lessons about owning, even though it's not that much land, about owning a big block for people that work full time, and caring for it and having those backup plans in place for things like puppy school. But once all this rain's gone and the mud's cleared and the grass will regrow with no problem, then, and we get the resource consent, and just getting over those hurdles, which is just part of life and definitely part of running a business.
Yeah.
Just being able to put it to good use for all these lovely dogs is going to be amazing, and such a load off to have a private space to run them as opposed to having to use public spaces.
Yeah, I love this so much, Sophie, because it's like actually giving us a real world example. It's not like the sunshine. I'm a real advocate for not everything is a sunshine and rainbow.
Oh yeah.
And like, yeah, I bought all this land and la la la. Like, actually, like, oh no, there are learnings, there are trials and tribulations, and I'm still going through them, but I'm still excited and love my business. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so many opportunities that you've been given to be like, oh, this is too hard, and you're not. So I think it's really awesome. Also, side note, Nan would love to play in the mud. She
Would.
Loves mud. So I don't know, you could maybe utilize that for the mud lover dogs. I don't know.
It stinks. It smells so bad. But don't worry, we'll make sure that there's a nice mud pit, a clean-ish, not smelly mud pit, just for Nan.
Oh, she would love it. I forgot to ask, what were you doing before you started Pawsitive Behaviours? Were you at uni, or did you have a job and then quit the job? And
I was working full-time for the District Health Board as an administrator for one of the mental health services. It was amazing.
Well,
it was such a great job.
So how scary was that for you to decide, no, I'm going to become a business owner / dog trainer / landowner? Like, what happened? Was that like scary as?
Do you want a little bit more information about what my midlife crisis was? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've all had those. So let's get into the crisis real quick. I think that's quite important.
It kind of all links up because I was working for a mental health service. So I was surrounded by really supportive people who were so understanding. But I started with a lovely trip in Rarotonga, actually. And when we were flying back, we flew into a thunderstorm. And the plane felt like it was going to break into 1,000 pieces, and I felt like I was going to die. And people on the plane were screaming, like it was really scary. And I'm sitting there with my partner, and he reckons he lost blood flow in his arm because I was holding on so tight, looking him dead in the eye, like we're going to die. So that was quite traumatic. And then I also started having these like wild panic attacks, and my anxiety started to get really severe. I was going to my doctor like every week, just saying like I can't do this. I'm having to go home from work early. I don't know why this is happening. And then I talked to my dad about it, who very kindly enlightened me that there's a possibility that I suffer from hormone imbalance, and being on hormonal contraception could really stuff me mentally. So I talked to my doctor about that, and sure enough, that's exactly what was happening to me. So I had no idea. I couldn't figure out why these panic attacks were happening. It just happened to coincide after this traumatic airplane flight. And during that time is when I enrolled in the EAP program, the Employee Assistance Program, and started seeing a psychologist who specialised conveniently in counselling and life coaching. So it was her that asked me, what do you want to do with your life? Because she could see that I was just sitting there, just blah, 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 with no real direction or meaning behind the words that were coming out of my mouth. So when I said I wanted to work with dogs, she was like, well, why don't you? So I looked around, I said, that's a great question. So I started looking at some business courses, first and foremost. It's quite important that you know how to run a business when you start
Mhm.
one, as well as some dog training and psychology online courses as well, which was really helpful. Um, and then I sort of had to break it to my boss at the time, who was amazing, that this is what I wanted to do with my life. And I didn't think that it would take off very quickly, but just so that she was aware. And she was so supportive, just absolutely on board with it, as were my team members, who were also really amazing. And then I did start my business partway through my business course. And obviously I started with classes and in-home sessions, and I was working like nights and weekends outside of my full-time job,
Mm.
um, and really popular. And then I dropped a day, started doing 4 days at my desk job and doing Tuesdays doing pet walks. Um, and they were very, very good about that, about letting me do that. Um, and then my boss resigned, which was really sad because she was the best boss I've ever had. And I got along well with the replacement, because I was the personal assistant to that person.
Mm.
Um, and then it just sort of became like I needed to step away from working full time to be able to pursue my career, my passion. So I went back to hospo for a time. I left my job at the DHB, and that was really sad. It was really, really
Yeah.
awful because I really love that job and my team was so amazing. And to this day, I still talk about them all the time and
Yeah.
keep in contact with a lot of them. Started doing coffee again and just sort of slowly phased out doing another job until I was able to take it full time. And that was really smart. Rather than just sort of quitting my job and hoping for the best, I sort of tapered it so that I still had set income and could pay my bills, until I was at the point where I knew that I was financially stable in my business to be able to do it full time. And I'm really lucky.
Oh, I feel so happy and refreshed to hear that story, because a lot of people that that I talk to or that come on the podcast, they are all in the sort of like coaching industry, and a lot of them just were like, I quit my job and all the things. And while I think that's great, I'm a big like baby stepper, and so I'm actually similar to your journey. Eventually the goal is to wean off, and then I just need to actually figure out what Walnut Wednesday actually is, but that's another story. So it's actually really nice to hear a different perspective, because we haven't had someone on the podcast who's sort of done that and kind of done a little bit of a hustle on the side, but then started cutting down the other side, and it's all ended up being quite a sunshine and rainbow story at the end, with more learnings in between.
Well, I really showed people, like, so many people, like family and friends, were like, you'll never make enough money to live doing dogs. Like, that's ridiculous. And my dad is a businessman, like through and through, and specializes in management and strategic management and risk. So when he was kind of like, "Are you sure about this?" But my dad's very supportive, but at the same time, he was, risk. You got to be smart. So when we talked about like my turnover, particularly the most recent financial year, he couldn't believe it. And I was at my parents' house a little while ago, and I was walking my dogs with my mum, and we were talking about my dad, and she sort of rolled her eyes and she was like, "He is so proud of you. We go to like dinner parties or to the golf club, and he tells people, about your business and, that you walk dogs for a living. Like, how amazing is that?" And she's like, to the point where I've had to take him aside sometimes and go, "These people have heard the same story 3 times." which is so special to me, because I really, really respect my dad, and I think he's an amazing businessman. He's got so much to teach people. But yeah, I really sort of showed people that I can make a decent living working with dogs and doing what I love at the same time.
That must feel so good. That must feel so good, like in your whole like body. Just feel so rewarding, I think.
Yeah, totally.
Before we wrap up, Sophie, I feel like I could talk to you for like 3 hours, but I wanted to know if you have any like quick tips for walnuts who, one, have a dog, and two, for a walnut who doesn't, but like with like walking past dogs and things like that? Are there any like little quick pointers that you could let us know before we start wrapping up?
Having a dog, I could talk about this for 3 hours. I think it's really important that each dog owner understands their own individual dog. Every dog is an individual. They're all different. There's no one right way to train all the dogs. And there's no one dog, they're all different. So it's really important to understand your own dog individually, and what their own needs are, what drives them to do things that you want them to do, what they love, food, toys, affection, all of those kinds of things. Because it's really important for a dog to be happy and balanced and be able to relax and enjoy a human world. Dogs are so different to humans, and people forget that. We try to put human ideas on them, and when they don't behave in ways that we think they should, we get really frustrated or really upset. But dogs are so different to humans. So that's definitely a big tip from me. My dogs are polar opposites. They're really different. Pebbles is quite confident, and very energetic, and prone to that switch flicking really quick. So I have to be really mindful of her and what she's doing, and make sure that she doesn't do anything stupid. But she loves a ball. She loves any type of food. She loves to interact with me. So when we're out walking, I spend a lot of time focusing on her and making sure that her needs are met. Whereas Loki is quite an anxious boy. He's very clingy. He's very unsure of people and other dogs. So he loves to be just like cuddled and reassured. So lots of affection and time one-on-one with him at home has been really important to make sure that they're really happy. So understanding your own individual dog is really important. For people that don't have dogs and passing them in the street, or people, especially if they haven't had dogs before and don't have that understanding of what it's like to have a dog, again, every dog is different. And most dogs, not all, some dogs are very happy-go-lucky and love everybody, but most dogs can be quite apprehensive of new people without us even realising. So even me, when I walk past dogs that I don't know, I generally don't interact with them unless they come up to me first. And I think it should be just a general understanding between everybody that if someone has got their dog on a lead and they clearly move out of the way of anybody that's coming towards them, it's a clear sign that they don't want to be interacted with.
Yeah.
That's something
Also,
that we struggle with.
Yeah, and being a person, you wouldn't, if you were just walking along, you wouldn't want someone to come up to you and go, oh, I imagine maybe what it feels like to be pregnant, where the people come up to you and want to rub your belly and you're like, I didn't consent.
Don't touch me.
Touching. Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know you right now. Yeah, cool. Awesome. Thank you. And is there anything that's like left on your heart that you feel like you haven't raised, or that you want to just touch on again for the walnuts listening, whether it's about like your journey and being brave, or doggy things?
I think that probably the only other thing would be the actual element of running a business. I think it's very important that, and especially for success, you can fluke it totally. But to be able to run a successful business in your chosen field, two of the most important things are acquiring the skills to run a business. So I've done my certificate in small business and project management through Te Wānanga o Aotearoa, and really enjoyed it. And if I didn't do that course, I don't think I'd be where I am today, because I wouldn't understand things like tax, operations management, marketing, all of those things that, if you're really good at something, but you don't know the logistics of running a business, can get you into a lot of trouble. As well as having people that support you, can mentor you, and can help you through difficult times. Like I've got a lovely lady called Liz, who's actually one of my regular clients now. She was my tutor for my small business course. I've got Steve, who makes all my gear, like my walking belts and leads and stuff.
Oh yes, I need to get one by the way.
But he also trains aviation security dogs and has previously been a dog handler. So working dogs and scent dogs are like his forte, and his dog knowledge is just out of this world. Nothing compares to having somebody who knows what they're talking about that you can meet with face to face. And Ryan Cartledge, who also happens to be a Kapiti local, and he is like a world-renowned animal trainer, and he just lives here just doing his thing. And I happened to stumble across him at a dog training seminar, and we connected, and he runs Animal Training Academy, which also has been like a lifeline for my business of like global, amazing, positive reinforcement animal trainers with significantly more knowledge than I'll ever have. And I'm a full member, so I get to access their brains and ask them questions, and they get to do that for me too. But having those people a part of my business and supporting me and mentoring me has meant that I'm not just kind of going blind and hoping for the best. And I'm not Googling for dog training information, which is a really bad idea, by the way. There's so much crap online. But I've got these people that support me, know me, and are so willing to invest in me and my business. So understanding how to run a business and having people to support you and mentor you is so important in any business, whatever you do. And it's been the lifeline and the driving force, and probably the key to my success, really.
That's a really really good point about the support thing as well, because you can have like when you're going to do the things, and sometimes I feel like people who aren't doing the thing that you're doing don't quite understand, and it can feel like a little bit like gutting sometimes, because it's like, oh, I'm excited about this idea, but you don't actually get it, so you're not as excited as I am. Whereas if you have the support network in the spiderweb of the things that you're interested in, it kind of builds that a little bit more. And yeah, that support network is really, really important. So thank you for sharing that, and for giving people permission to actually crave it, to get support where they need to. You don't have to do the business thing on your own. You probably could if you wanted to, but like, why not share the
absolutely. Yeah, that just pointed out things to me that I could be better at, and that constructive criticism has been really helpful in sort of in strengthening my business and just sort of making all fit together better.
Yeah, totally. So token question, Sophie, that I ask everyone who visits Walnut Wednesday is, what does being a walnut mean to you?
I've thought about this quite a lot since you asked me to be on the podcast. And I suppose for me, it was about, for you, it's a person that decides to be brave. So I suppose that's exactly what I've done. So being a walnut to me was listening to those people telling me that I couldn't do my passion because I wouldn't make a living out of it. Like I'd always have to do something else to make sure I could pay my way in this world. And I let those people say that to me, and I let myself believe it. So the brave element for me was teaching myself that voice in my head, or their voices in my head, doesn't have to be right. And that doing what I want to do and love to do and learning how to succeed at it is much more important to me, because at the end of the day, what other people think about me, or about, and this is relevant for everybody, what anyone thinks about you actually doesn't matter. If you want to have a good life, you have to make yourself happy first and foremost. So I think that's what being a walnut means to me, is not listening to the voices of other people in your head, but letting your passions and your desire take over that.
I'm getting emotional again. That's a really lovely description of being a walnut. And it reminds me, there's that quote, like, what other people think about me is none of my business, or something. There's like a quote like that as well. So you just really,
yeah,
it's beautiful. Thank you so much. Where can any Walnut find you if they want to connect with you online, and if they want to enroll their dog in all the schools and or whatever, if they just want to follow your personal journey, where can we hang out with you?
So my Facebook and my Instagram are both just Pawsitive Behaviours. My website is pawsitivebehaviours.com. And if they want to follow my personal journey, my personal Instagram, I think, is Sophie Bell 94. And I'm looking at expanding that actually a little bit to make a little bit of a personal blog about all of those things that I just described and how to and what I think Walnut means to me.
Oh, I'm excited. I can't wait. And Walnut, I'll put all the links in the show notes as well if you want to find Sophie. But also Sophie's all over Nana's Instagram too. I made Nana an Instagram, and so like 3 of us all have her account, so she's all over that one too. If you follow Nan. But Sophie, this has been such a wonderful, oh, hello, baby.
Right on cue.
If you can't see, if you're not watching the video, Walnut, and just listening, we've just had a little doggy visitor pop up on the screen. Sophie, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing what you have shared, not only for like dog owners and things, but also for an example of a person who just like followed their heart and their desires and made a thing a thing. So thank you for all you do in the world, and for my Nan, and for everyone for just following your gut and going with it. So appreciate this time and this chat to talk with you.
And thank you so much for having me.
Yay. All right, Walnut, happy Walnut Wednesday and have a good week, and I will talk to you next week. Bye.